Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at Riderflex. We hope you enjoy today's podcast. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the Riderflex show for updates on new episodes. And by the way, if you haven't already, check out the book we recently launched, The Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring, available for purchase on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Jeffery Graham on the Riderflex podcast. Hello, Jeffery. How are you, sir?
Hello. Good. Thank you. Nice to be on your podcast.
Do you play? Rock and roll band? Give me the history on the guitars.
I've been playing guitar for about 30 years. About 10 years ago, though, I switched over to bass because there are so many guitar players in the world. And so I figured I'd find a little more of a niche. And now I play in a little jazz group and play in restaurants and stuff like that in my spare time.
That's cool. That's cool. Who's your favorite all-time guitarist?
I'd say Grant Green. Have you heard of Grant Green? He's a jazz guitarist. I like jazz guitar, and he had a beautiful, sweet, melodic take on improvisation. Grant Green.
Just the other day, I don't know how this came up in my feed, but there was a clip from Stevie Ray Vaughan being interviewed by somebody, and I don't know how. Where that was in the timeline before his death, but it was live, and he's being interviewed and they're like, well, can you play a little bit? And he just picks up his guitar and he's playing. And I was like, man, I forgot how good he was.
Yes. Much imitated. Quite a great player for sure.
I was in music retail. I was a store man. Remember when you had to go to the store to buy music? I'm sure you do.
Barely.
I was in music retail. I was a store manager for a music store when he died. And I remember we could, we just sell out of all the stuff, just sold, constantly. Couldn't get enough of it in. Anyway, so you still play a little bit. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it keeps me centered and occupied in my spare time.
All right, very good. Tell me about, Jeffery early on. Mom, dad, siblings, where you grew up, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I grew up in Massachusetts and went to a public high school, went to University of Massachusetts at Amherst, where my dad had gone and his brother had gone. Okay. So it was kind of the male family tradition to go to UMass. I studied communication. The big first turning point in my life is I spent a year in Paris, France, between my sophomore and junior year. Met my now wife, who was studying abroad from Greece. Went back to college. We wrote letters to each other for 2.5 years, back before there was email and phones were real expensive. and after college, I moved to Greece, and I lived in Greece for 2.5 years.
Wow. Is that where you got married?
No, we got married. We moved from Greece. We got engaged in Greece, and then we moved to New York City, and we got married. We actually had 3 weddings. We had a marriage when we got to New York in front of a judge, and then we had a family wedding in Massachusetts, and then we had a big family wedding in Greece.
Is her dad like a super old-fashioned, one of those super old-fashioned Greek guys like you see, you kind of have the image from the movies. Is he like that or no?
He was a sweet guy, but I don't know if you've seen the movie Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh yeah. That's actually who I was kind of thinking about that character a little bit. Yeah.
People ask me, is it true? And my answer is it was a lot worse. It was a lot more extreme. They're a lovely family, and we're very close now. But it was a big cultural shock for them. They were, it's a very traditional society. So here's this American show up, and I was playing guitar in bars, and that was my shtick. And I did not look like a good prospect, and I'll tell you, at the time, I really wasn't. But I cleaned myself up and turned myself around.
That's a pretty good story. You've been married for how long now?
We've been married for, we have 3 weddings, so I have trouble keeping track of the real number. But we've been together for 30 years.
Wow, good for you, man. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's your wife do, and how many kids you got?
I have 2 kids. I have one who's graduating from college this month in New York City. So she's 21, turning 22. I've got a 16-year-old son. My wife and I now live in Mill Valley, California. We were in New York City for 25 years and moved out here about 7 years ago.
Huh.
And she is a kindergarten teacher.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Why'd you move to California?
I was working for Twitter, and
Okay.
it was a career move, and everybody was telling me how wonderful it was out here, and I was like, life is short. Let's. We've been in New York for a long time. Let's see what the West Coast is like.
Man, and do you still feel that way? I mean, I don't know. California gets a bad rap the last few years. How are you feeling now?
Um, I love it. I love it. I'm not. I know that there's a lot of horror stories told about California, but it's a really wonderful place to live.
Okay.
I live in a town that's, we've got mountains, and we have the sea, and
That's
we
cool.
have nice place. Yeah.
All right. And you got a 16-year-old. So you got what is that, a junior? Junior high
He's
school?
a sophomore. He's going to be a
Okay.
junior next year. Yeah. So he's just starting to cause serious amounts of trouble.
Is he the rebel, or was your daughter?
You know, she was really easy. I think he's going to be a little bit trickier, but he's good. We're blessed.
He
We're
hasn't
blessed.
called you from the sheriff's office yet, has he?
He is not. I told him, look, if you need to be bailed out, I'm coming on a Monday, so you better not get you better not get a call on a Friday, man.
I know parents that have purposely let their kids stay overnight or
Yeah.
through the weekend to
Oh
just
yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
know
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
That's definitely part of the game plan for sure.
How about you? Were you ever arrested? Anything fun in your youth? Anything cool you want to
Uh,
confess about, Jeffrey?
I've never been arrested. I've had a few brushes with border authorities.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Europe for a while and had to play a little bit loose with the residency requirements of the various countries I've been in. So I've been in some sticky situations with border people and stuff like that. But I've mainly stayed out of trouble.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if you wanted to confess to anything here on the podcast.
No, 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 no. I've fully
Were you
confessed.
a good kid, straight A student? What kind of kid were you?
Great question. I was a late bloomer.
Okay.
So I think, I was, showed flashes of potential, but wasn't really until I met my wife and sort of developed a purpose that things, at that point things really turned around and
Okay.
been on a decent run ever since.
And your folks, mom, dad, what they do for a living?
My mom was a housewife. My dad was worked at Polaroid. He started on the assembly line at
Oh,
Polaroid and worked
wow.
his way up
Wow.
to divisional president or something like that. So he was sort of a marketing general manager type person, and real taught me a lot about the right ways to be professional. He's a real pro, so he's been a great mentor and coach for me.
Still alive?
Yes, he is. Yes,
Mom and dad still married?
they are not. No, they're still friendly, but they've gone their separate ways.
What were they? Did you or were they divorced when you were in school, or you were already grown?
They were divorced, but my dad lived close by, so it
Oh,
was kind of the best situation that you could be in when parents are separated.
Okay. And how about siblings?
I have a sister who's still in Eastern Mass, and I'm close to her, and she's got a lovely daughter, our niece, and cousin to my kids. So we've still got pretty strong connections to the East Coast.
Okay. So when you were a kid, I mean, I'm asking this, of course, because you're kind of in the cannabis business a little
Mm,
bit. I mean, it's not you're not a grower, but you're
right.
tied to the industry. Was cannabis part of your life? Were your parents cool with it? Were you never a cannabis user? Give me some history, like high school, college, a little bit.
Yeah, I wasn't a real user in high school. Wasn't particularly afraid of it or anything like that, but wasn't a really big part of my life.
Okay.
You know, frankly, it didn't really become a big, sort of kind of foundational part of the way I experienced life until probably my 30s. I
Really?
was in it. Yeah, I was, although, I was around it and people were cool with it, and it wasn't a big deal. I think it was mainly, I was really into athletics. I was an endurance athlete in my
Oh,
30s and did an Ironman triathlon and a lot of kind
oh,
of
okay,
sort
okay.
of somewhat extreme events, and that was cannabis was a really useful tool. And then as a musician, it's a really kind of nice sometimes window and perspective in on music. So it was something that's been kind of a really useful part of my life for the last 20 years or so, but wasn't really into it, wasn't a part of the industry until really a few years ago.
That's interesting. It's opposite for most people, right? Most people were heavy into it younger in life and then faded as
Yeah.
they got older.
Yeah. I guess that is true. That is true.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
All right.
yeah, but that's just the way it worked out.
By the way,
But
you look like you're in great shape now. You obviously are still doing something athletically because you look pretty good. What's the story?
well, we gotta get a really selective camera angle right here, and I'm using all the filters available. So don't make too much judgment.
Uh,
I try to stay active, and I actually in the last 3 years I picked up golf. Kind of one of these COVID golfers. I learned to play with my son, and that's really great thing. And then just trying to keep everything working well. Puts me in the gym a few times a week just to make sure that I maintain mobility and strength.
what's your 16-year-old think about cannabis, and what are your conversations with him? And is it okay if he smokes on the back porch? Yeah? How does that work in your family?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I we've been open about it. Obviously, jumping into the cannabis industry was I think at the time he was 12 or something like that, 11. So it was, something to think about
Yeah.
in terms of how to communicate that. Um, and I think what I've sort of landed on is pretty straightforward, which is this is something that people use when they're grown,
Okay.
and I think that's I stand behind that message. I think that there are definitely the younger you are, the more risks there are, 13, 14, 15, 16, that type of thing. So and there's science behind that too, and the way the brain develops.
Okay.
So that was sort of that's been the message, and that's but there are a lot of things like that, right? The same with alcohol, the same with
Yeah. Yeah.
driving fast, so it's the standard issue. Look, this is something people use, this is something I use, this is something can be used responsibly, but there are also there are also traps to it, like there are traps to a lot of other things that are also that have good sides to it, and that's
Yeah.
really what the conversation's about.
Isn't it so funny? You tell a 16-year-old, you're like, okay, don't drink, don't smoke cannabis, don't have sex without a condom, don't drive your car fast. And 16-year-olds do all of those things.
Yeah, or yeah, a mix or some, yeah, exactly. I mean, I like the one thing that I really like is when I play golf with Paul. You know, I see all of his really high risk, high reward shots, and I'm like, okay, that's just a reflection on his personality. Everything is
Probably.
hard, and let's just go for it. So that's where you're at, and we've all been there, and most of it get through it. So I think communication and
Key.
perspective as much as possible.
Yeah, our kids are grown. All of them are in their 30s now, but we kind of had that mentality of not too loose, but not too strict, right? Like I knew if I suffocated them, that wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
I kind of had a few rules. I was like, don't get anybody pregnant, don't have a wreck, don't drink and drive and have a wreck, don't get anybody pregnant, and don't get arrested. Like beyond that, have a good time.
Wow. Okay. Those are good. It's nice. Rules come in threes. That's pretty straightforward. I like that. Well, congratulations for getting them through, and
we made it through those. Yeah, those were key. Those were key.
Nice.
And nobody got but anyway. Okay, so talk to me about how did it happen for you? Because when people look you up on LinkedIn, I mean, great career. You worked for, all the great companies. I mean, Twitter, Google, BlackRock. How did this transition into entrepreneurship and cannabis happen? How did that happen? If you maybe you can walk me through that.
Sure. Yeah. So it actually was first cannabis and then entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It's pretty simple. When I was in Greece, I was at the time buying. My only access to news was the International Herald Tribune newspaper, which I could get at the kiosk in the middle of central Athens. And I was always a news devourer as a person, even as a young person.
Okay.
So I'd go get that newspaper every day. And that was my only source of information. But I started reading about the internet. 1996, 1997. The internet was still something that was it wasn't available to me in Greece, and it was developed enough, obviously, that there were a bunch of people that knew this was going to be a big deal. But it kind of came to me through this channel. So I took I just put my chips on the internet. I had a sense that this was going to be a really transformational opportunity. So that's when we moved to Greece. We went to New York City, and I got a master's degree in basically studying the internet. So that experience, and that worked out really well for me. I sort of could become a continual learner. I ended up getting a PhD studying stuff that was sort of related to the internet. And by being a continual learner, I could sort of stay ahead of everybody and be an expert in my field in the internet marketing, later sort of marketing measurement, data, social media, kind of got a little bit more specialized. So that experience really taught me, like, if you get to a place where there's a really strong tailwind, makes you look like a genius, right? So I got to a point in my career where I felt like there wasn't that as much opportunity for growth, personal growth, because I was 25 years into it. I felt like I knew the answers to all the questions, and there were not a lot of new questions coming up. And, I wanted to be exposed to something new. And cannabis, to me, felt like an opportunity that was similar in that, it's a huge opportunity in the sense that this is a plant that people use all around the globe. They risk jail time to use cannabis, right? Probably 1 billion people use this plant, but it's illegal virtually everywhere. But it's inevitable, I believe, that it will be legal virtually everywhere. So I I basically took a flyer on the industry and said, okay, well, how do I get to be a part of this industry? And found an opportunity to be head of business intelligence for a big cannabis brand in California. Saw it as sort of a paid internship of, hey, let me just figure out what this industry is all about, and just kind of followed my gut.
And now at the time you were working for BlackRock, right? I
Yeah.
mean, what what do you come on? You tell your wife, you're like, hey, look, I know I'm working for BlackRock and I worked for Twitter and Google, but I'm gonna just leave all that behind and go to work in the cannabis industry. How did that? Was your wife like,
Yeah.
cool, go for it? But how'd that go?
Well, she's learned to kind of not be too surprised by these types of decisions, I guess. And I was actually, pretty unhappy, at BlackRock. It was I was wearing a tie and uncomfortable shoes, and commuting back and forth to New York City, and it
Yuck.
was the financial world. I thought that I could sort of like, it's like I was like figured that it was just another group of people with their own sort of customs that I could just kind of fit into, but it wasn't for me. So it was an opportunity really to go to an opportunity where I could be more myself. Yeah.
Now that right, let's just take a pause right there for the listeners. So everybody out there listening that wants some career advice or maybe aspiring entrepreneurs, sometimes, you chase the title, you chase the company name, you chase the money. It doesn't mean you're going to be happy there, man.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. Especially as you get older, right, Jeffrey? I mean, as you get older, it's like, okay, I'm working for this mega company making all kinds of money, but I'm on this freaking airplane. I'm wearing this damn tie. I'm having to go to New York City and I don't want to be
Yeah.
there. I'm miserable. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't, life is short, and you can't you've got to sacrifice, obviously, to make a living. We're all doing that, right? Most people would probably be doing something else if they didn't have to make money. Now it may end up looking like what you're doing to make money, when we're all said and done, but yeah, you only live once, and you have to things go by fast, so you have to make the decisions. It's also just nice to I'm somebody who always believes that, like, the risky move is usually the better move, all things being equal.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think people overweight stability and underweight risk, and so
Good.
I think I've always felt there's a lot of risk in staying where you are, and that's just coming out of just my personality. I'm
Yeah.
always wanting to push to the next thing. That's where I'm comfortable, and so I wanted to find a place where I could do that.
The real risk and stability is being 74 years old and having a shit ton of regrets because you didn't take any risks, right? I mean,
For sure. Or being 58 years old and being laid off and just being like, okay, now what do I do? I know I can't go anywhere. I've been doing the same thing. And things are so dynamic. So that that's what drives me. It's sort of that fear of irrelevance. You kind of have to just
yes.
constantly be doing the next thing, as because you're doing a podcast and you've done hundreds of them, and
Yep.
so you're demonstrating that.
Let's pause right there for anybody listening that might be in their late 40s, getting close to 50. Jeffrey, you probably know this. Riderflex, our day job at Riderflex is a recruiting and staffing firm. That's kind of how we pay the bills. And the podcast is something we do for marketing and to give back to society, etc. I cannot tell you how often somebody in their 50s calls me, just got laid off. Didn't really spend a lot of time on LinkedIn over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Didn't really spend a lot of time networking. They were at a big company, so they thought they were safe. They've only done one thing for the last 15 years. And here they are, 54 years old, 55 years old, and they're calling me going, "Oh man, nobody's hiring. Nobody will talk to me. Like I can't get an interview. I can't." And they're like, "Is this ageism thing real?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's real. It might be illegal. It might not be right, but it's real, and you're in it, you know."
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
uh, and they used to be a C-level executive, or they used to be an executive VP, and now they're 55, and nobody gives a shit, or they don't
Right.
care. They don't did what they care what they did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, be careful not to get too comfortable as you head towards your 50 years old, because once you're past 50, if you have not diversified your networking portfolio, if you've not continued to learn, if you've not continued to network, if you have not built up a good social media channel, you could easily find yourself working at Home Depot along with the other 57-year-old guys that can't find a job.
Yeah. Yeah. That's scary. That's scary. And there's a lot of runway between 55 and 75. The 20 years is a lot of income that needs to be made up. I think you're right. I think that is probably true even nowadays for like a 35-year-old. Like, I mean, right? I mean, you can be doing something for 8 years between 28 and 27 and 35. And then that thing, people don't need that thing anymore. And that's a tough thing to do. So
How about all the 35-year-old software engineers out there right now that are scared shitless because Chat GPT and
yeah,
AI is moving at light speed, and they're all like, "Oh, whoa, wow."
right, right. Copywriters, yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. So I moved into cannabis, and then I didn't expect to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I did go in sort of open ended, but the first week that I started in this cannabis company, what I
How
did,
big
which
was it? Give the listeners a little kind of, yeah, like,
at the time they were calling themselves the largest vertically integrated cannabis company in California. I don't know
okay.
whether that was true or not,
All right.
but they were doing, they were pulling in a lot of capital, and they had I don't know what their revenue was, but they were, a couple hundred people, and
Couple hundred. Okay. All right.
burning a lot of money, but a couple hundred
I'm
people, and
sure they were burning cash as fast as they could pull it in.
they were faster than they could pull it in. And so, the first week I didn't know anything, and so I said, okay, well, let me just figure out what are all the data companies in cannabis, right? And you make a list and you look at their websites and you call them and you say, hey, I'm the new data guy and I want you to tell me what you do because maybe I'll buy your services. And by the time I went through that process, I was like, really? Like that's
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 it.
that's what's available, right? It was like, because I think this is a really big opportunity industry. And I just obviously came from industries that were full of data, advertising
Yes.
and finance. So, and then I needed data that I couldn't get. I needed information that I couldn't get from these companies. So then I had to invent something. And once I invented it, I realized it was a really good idea. And so I
Okay.
negotiated with NorCal to spin it off as an
Ah,
independent company and just
ah.
just went for it and just I don't know, created an LLC and
So
figured
they
it
backed
out.
it. So NorCal backed it financially, or did you put in your own cash too, or how'd you set it up?
I basically bought the IP from them. I wanted to do it the right way. So I developed the idea on their dime. So I didn't want to just skip out of town and start a new company. I figured that would cause me problems down the road. So I basically negotiated that they could get a stake if I could take the IP. And then I put in some of my own money just to get the company started. So
And they
that eventually got diluted over time, but I wanted to buy out that idea because I didn't want them to sue me in 5 years
Yeah,
because I
totally.
developed it.
Good move. How much and by the way, for the listeners, now's a good time. Let's just get this in there. Pistildata.com, right?
Yes.
Pistil data.com. How much cash have you raised since then? Or what can you share as far as
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
we've raised about $7.5 million in the
Nice.
last 3 years.
Wow. Congratulations, man.
Thank
Nice.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that
Thank you.
angel, seed money, family offices, VCPE mixture?
It started with angel with a little bit of institutional in the first round before we really had a product off the ground. And then we did a seed round in October of 21.
How about that? All right, very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And are you still in charge of the cap table, Jeffrey, or have you 7.5 million? I'm guessing probably not. I'm guessing
What do you mean in charge of the cap table? What's that mean?
51? Are you 51% owner still, or no?
Um, you know, I don't think we need to get into that, but I've always wanted to ensure that we control the destiny of the company, and we do.
That's why I asked the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great to raise cash, but sometimes when you raise cash with, and you give up control, sometimes, I mean, so many people have been on this podcast and they tell nightmare stories, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's great. Sometimes they love their investors. Sometimes it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
What can you
We've
give
been we don't have any horror stories in terms of investors turning
good for
our,
you?
twisting our arms or being a pain. And we've only been through the seed round, so we're not at the series part where we've created a board where there's more of them than us. So right
Okay,
now
good.
we're in a position where we can run it as a business. We're the ones on the ground. We're the ones that know it better than anybody else. So it's on us, and we get to make decisions. Yeah.
Is raising capital a pain in the ass? Do you hate that part of the job? Are you okay with it? Do you like it? Where's Jeffrey at with that?
Um, the problem with raising money is that it doesn't help you build the business, except you're raising money, right? So you're not talking to customers, you're not building the product, you're not managing people.
Yep.
So that's one. So it takes a lot of time, and that's a pain, because who wants to take time away from their business?
Right.
I think the second thing, which is the risk that I think that we've avoided pretty well, but I've seen people fall down this path quite a bit, is that the story, you start to act as if the investors are your customers and not your customers are your customers. Ooh. So you start changing your story and you start making decisions. So, for example, I'll make up an example, but it very, very easily, let's say that that you think that investors want to look at your daily active users, right? But so you went from 100 to 200, you go to 300, and you want to get to 400 because you think that that's what investors really care about. Maybe they're telling you that's what they care about, but maybe what's driving your business is not the number of users. Maybe what's driving your business is how much revenue you get for the users. Maybe the next 100,000 users are worthless to you, but because you're trying to tell that story, and you're basically start managing to a metric that is important to investors but not important to your business, and that can happen in 100 different ways. And you're always telling a story to investors about what your future is, what your products are, what your strategy is, and there's always a little bit of play between reality and what they want to hear. But it's very easy to start serving them, and that just, startups are so fragile that if you start to make decisions that aren't the best thing for the actual survival of the business, that can be really dangerous.
That is good stuff, Jeffrey. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Can you give the listeners an overview? PistilData.com. Give us the elevator pitch. Go for it.
Yeah. So we are a data company. We serve cannabis businesses. We're a B2B cannabis data company, and we help brands and retailers make better decisions with data. We have two main businesses. One is data itself. So we collect a bunch of publicly available data. We do a bunch of transformations and cleaning and processing of that data and organizing that data, which basically is a a catalog of products in the cannabis space and a lot of information about those products.
Okay.
We sell that data directly to companies, and then we also have tools and applications that they can use to analyze that data. So we have about 200 companies as clients, and most of them are brands, but we also work with retail customers, and we're working across 34 states in the U.S. right now.
And for a retail, are you providing them data for their store, like customer information, product sales, inventory stuff, all of that as well? And is it tied to the POS, or how do they get access to it? I'm not asking you like 5 questions in one there. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, those are all the right questions. So what's interesting about the cannabis market is that the point of sale systems are integrated with the e-commerce systems.
Okay.
So if you go, particularly once COVID hit and cannabis businesses were deemed essential services, people needed to be able to order cannabis and make sure that it was in the store to come pick up or get delivered. So all these software systems really made sure that their e-commerce systems were up to date with what was happening in the store in terms of the stock in the store, the prices and the promotions. So they're very accurate. You have that across some other industries. If you go to Dick's Sporting Goods, they'll tell you not only how many kayaks are for sale, but how many red ones are in the store near you. And if you want to go to another zip code, it'll tell you, right? So there's really good information about products and prices that's highly accurate and more or less real time. So we collect that data as well as some other data as well, but we organize all of that information, and that's the real hard part, because cannabis industry data is enormously messy for a whole variety of reasons. So for a store, what we can tell them is what's going on in their local market.
Okay.
So if you're in Palm Springs, if you've ever been to Palm Springs, there's literally 8 different dispensaries in 5 blocks on the same street. So how do you, as one of those retail stores, how do you compete? How do you get customers to come in your store, right? Customers that are trying to find the product that they want at the price that they want. You're competing against these stores for that foot traffic and for that wallet. So what we're doing is we're taking all of that information from those stores and helping them benchmark their own product assortment, their pricing, and their promotions.
So okay. So for a commoner, you're telling me as a store owner, like, hey, if you don't have this strain and if you don't have this brand, not a good idea. You need to have this in inventory. And by the way, here's the average price everybody's selling it for in your area. Stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or a salesperson comes into the store and says, hey, you should buy, Steve's weed, and you can put it on the shelf for $30 for, an eighth. And you can look into Pistil data and you can say, well, actually, Steve's weed is really selling at $22. So you got to give it to me $11 wholesale, or it's being promoted everywhere. So seems like people are trying to get rid of this stuff. Or I want to have something unique and everybody has it. Or I only want something that everybody has because it's popular. Whatever type of retail strategy I have relative to the rest of the market, retailers have very good data about their own store, but they struggle to understand what's happening around them. So they spend a lot of time, visiting other stores, going to menus, trying to figure out. And so we just make it very easy for them to understand what is their niche and how can they be really competitive.
That's great. Is it an inventory management system for their own store too, or that's separate stuff?
We don't manage inventory. No, it's right now it's primarily it's market intelligence is the way that we sort of summarize it.
Okay, gotcha. All right. And what's the business model for you? Is it like a monthly subscription, or how's it set up?
Yeah, we're annual. We do annual subscriptions, and we sell access to the data, where we'll just give you the data every day into your cloud, or we'll sell you an annual subscription to one of our software platforms, which we have a Sales Enablement platform, which is a mobile application. We have a brand platform. We have a retail platform. So
I see.
So there's a SaaS aspect of the business, and then there's a data as a service part of the business.
I got you. Okay, very good. And do I have to sign a year contract? Do I have to buy a year service, or can I just go month to month?
For you, I'll let you go month to month because we have such a good relationship. But everybody else has to be annual.
Are you do you have like a sales? You have like a sales lead or like a VP of sales that's out there pounding the pavement, knocking on doors?
Yeah, we do. We've got a sales team. We prospect. We book demos.
Okay.
What's interesting about Pistil is I started the company in January of 2020. This is my garage. This is where the guy before me used to actually work on his car. I put some stickers on the wall so it looks like an office. And by March 2020, I had 3 people in here, and then I had to send everybody home because COVID hit.
Wow.
And so the first 2 years of building the business, we couldn't have people in the same place. So we built as a remote company. So we have everybody is scattered in across 3 countries and 10 states or something like that. So we're completely birthed from the COVID era type of business.
I'm a huge fan. I've done so many podcast episodes on the remote work. We're 100% remote at Riderflex. All my recruiters live across the country. We don't have an office.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of it. Yeah, and it does work if you manage it right. Okay, very good. And how big is the company? I don't know what you want to share. You want to share you probably don't want to share revenue, but employees, or just give us a general idea of the size of it so far.
Yeah, we're general idea of the size. I mean, told you 200 customers, 4 products, and about 20 full-time people.
Okay, very good. Is it growing at the pace you want it to grow? How are you feeling about your, whatever you're projecting for this year? Just talk to me about the growth piece.
Yeah. It's I'm never happy about how fast it's growing. I always wanted to grow faster.
Don't we? Yeah, don't we? Yeah, right. Always.
We are growing. We had, and it really, the vicissitudes of the cannabis industry and our ability to capture the market has changed over time. This time last year, we were in, 7 states and we had 1 product. Actually, in January of 2022, we were in like 4 states and we had 1 product. Now we're in 4 products. We're in 34 states. Nice. We're rolling out new products, and we actually just launched Canada. Today's Wednesday, 2 days ago. So we're continuing to expand. So we're growing well. We're growing well. We're growing as a SaaS business should. We had our best quarter ever in growth last quarter in Q1. But it's a dogfight. It's
always is.
We started with no competition, and now we have 4 competitors. So there are a bunch of people jumped on the bandwagon.
Let me guess, you're still not paying yourself what your resume would bring in the open market working for BlackRock or somebody like that. I'm just guessing.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. How'd you guess that?
Because I'm living the life myself, my friend. I did it. I made the mistake of running the math the other day because we've been running Riderflex for 7 years, and I don't know why I did this to myself. It's like torture. I told my wife, I'm like, if I look over the last 7 years on what I was making and what I probably could have made, like I think I've left about $1 million on the table.
Wow.
But I would not trade those 7 years for anything. And I'm way happier to your point. I mean, yeah. I was doing the same thing, man. I'm living in airplanes and hotels and, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I wouldn't change it.
Did you start Riderflex?
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yeah. I'm the founder and CEO of Riderflex. I do have a co-founder as well, but, and I wouldn't change anything. It's been the best experience of my life. And I was making pretty damn good money as a CEO and a COO for product companies before that. But I wouldn't change it for anything. The ability, you know what it is for me, and I'll stop ranting, but
no,
the freedom of I mean, if I want to get, I live in Colorado. If I want to get in my Jeep on a Friday and go to the mountains, I don't have to ask anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You
true.
know,
Yeah.
I always tell my wife, I'm like, if I ever have to ask permission to go on vacation again to anybody,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. 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 That is true. That is having that freedom and,
Yes.
the feeling that you're building something and you've been doing it for 7 years. That's a
Yes.
big chunk of your life, and I think you'll probably look back and say, hey, this is a thing that I did, regardless of whether you sell it for $10 trillion
Oh,
or
yeah. Yeah.
you turn it over to your co-founder or whatever. I built something, and I
Yes.
I, 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 I stepped up to the plate and I took a bunch of swings and I hit a bunch of balls out of the park, and that feels great. You built
You probably
something.
got you probably got some of these looks from your family members too. I'll never forget. I was sitting on the back porch. It was a Saturday afternoon. We were having barbecue or something, and my sons were sitting there. And I told them, I was like, "Hey, I'm going to quit my executive job and start a recruiting firm." And they're like, "Okay, Dad. Yeah, Dad. Sure, Dad. Yeah."
Right. Yeah. Well, I had to say I'm starting getting into the cannabis business, and that was
Oh
learning how
yeah.
to explain that to people was
How
also
about your
interesting.
father-in-law? How about your father-in-law? How'd that go?
Well, my father-in-law has passed. My mother-in-law, though, she keeps saying um, it's medical cannabis, right? And I say no, it's all. But she still thinks about it. But there's a great story. She lives in Greece, and when she came here to visit, she had sore knees. So I had a friend up Northern California who created a concoction, which is a cream, cannabis cream for her
Okay.
knees.
All right.
And so I gave it to her, and she said thank you. And I visited Greece about a year later, and a friend told me that she saw it applying to her knees and asked her, "Does this make your knees feel better?" And her answer was, "It makes everything feel better." So I don't know if that's medical or
That's great.
recreational or what, but
That's pretty good.
I think I'm glad that she got a taste of
Uh,
the power of the cannabis plant.
that's pretty funny. I want to ask you a couple of things here as we wrap up because we're almost out of time. I want to ask you kind of some uh, outside the lines questions, if you will, just a little bit. But
Okay.
before I do that, I just want to remind the listeners, pistildata.com. Jeffrey Graham also, you can find him on LinkedIn, got a bunch of followers there. Anything else you want to mention on social media or podcasts or books or anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Curious, you worked for Twitter, so I'm just fascinated to get your opinion on
Yeah.
Elon purchasing Twitter and what happened with Twitter and the Twitter files. That's like a big question, but I'm just kind of what's your just general thought on it, the whole thing?
Well, I am pretty close to it, and I know a lot of people there, and I was there for 4.5 years. It was pretty clear that he didn't really want to buy it. He kind of bluffed. He bluffed, and someone called his bluff, and they had to sue him to actually buy
Yeah,
it. So it's
yeah,
important to know.
yeah.
I don't think that he could have destroyed value faster at Twitter if he had a strategy for destroying value at Twitter. So if you think about the three main pillars of value in a company like Twitter, you
Yeah.
have the employees, which he really went straight at the jugular for the leadership, the people that were important to the people at Twitter, and obviously laid off a bunch of people in
Yeah.
totally sloppy ways. You and I would be fired in a second if we got rid of people that way. So
Yeah.
he destroyed the employee base. He destroyed the advertising base by just stupidity and alienating advertising. That's their number one source of revenue. So
Mm.
by basically doing stupid shit and just not treating them well. So all the advertising went away. And then he managed to really effectively alienate all of the producers on the platform who were creating content, all the blue check producers. So
Oh,
Twitter basically is simply getting people to produce content for free and selling it to advertisers and having employees manage that. So he sort of almost systematically went in the brief period he's been there to destroy the value of those things. So
Yeah.
that's what I observe from the outside is just a tremendous value destruction.
What do you think his strategy is? Like, why?
Um, I know somebody who worked with him, and what he says is when he met Elon, he was 80% genius and 20% insane. And when he left working with Elon, he was 80% insane and 20% genius. And I think that proportion is continuing to change over time. I think he's a billionaire with the plaything, and he's drinking his own Kool-Aid.
Gotcha. Okay, next one. I'm gonna move through these because I know I'm bumping you up on your time. Mushrooms, psilocybin.
Yeah.
So, quick thoughts around it. Are you a believer, and are you a user, and where do you think it's headed?
Yeah, I think that they're really powerful. They can be really powerful in really positive ways. I think they're can really open a perspective, and I think that they're a gift. They're a gift to humanity. There are obviously risks and downfalls as there are for all of these things, but I think that they really can help people. And there's the science shows they can help people with PTSD, and they can help people understand things they didn't understand before. I think that yeah, I think that they're a good thing. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for them to be used in therapy,
Okay.
and they're starting to be used that way, and I think that's a great thing.
Do you think they'll be legalized federally? Do you think cannabis and psilocybin will both get legalized across the country federally eventually?
I do think that cannabis will be decriminalized and liberalized from a federal, and let the states kind of operate and the businesses operate without the risk of the federal government screwing them over. I think that it will be psilocybin, but I think it'll be more the molecule that will start to work its way into pharmaceutical products.
If you had ultimate power, would you legalize all drugs across the country? Do you think the war on drugs is a waste of time, and would you just say, "Hey, this is a waste of time, just to legalize it all"?
Well, to say that the war on drugs is a waste of time is like the understatement of the century. I mean, it's been one of the most destructive and costly things that we've done. Well, probably second to misguided wars like the Vietnam War, right? Like it not only put millions of people in jail, but it's destroyed communities, and so it's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing that's been inflicted on people, particularly people of color. So yeah, the war on drugs needs to end. I think that drugs should be decriminalized. I think there are a lot of countries that deal with it much better, which is basically to treat drug addiction like a medical problem, and understand that there will always be people that use drugs too much and get into trouble, and try to treat that as a social problem, but not a criminal problem.
Would you release anybody in prison for a non-violent marijuana crime if you had the power?
I would release every person for a nonviolent drug crime right now, tomorrow, 100%.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
I would too. I would too. Last question. I know I sped through these because we're out of time. Last question. I should have booked you for longer. Does AI, there's all these people calling for this pause, timeout, whatever, slowdown of AI, and holy shit, it's moving fast. And oh my God, it's Skynet, from the
yeah,
Terminator movie.
yeah,
Are you nervous at all? Are you worried at all? Any
yeah,
last minute thoughts on that?
yeah. I think that there's a possibility that it's going to get out of control pretty fast and have a bunch of impacts that we can't control and that we can't predict. And I think it's a really serious threat. We don't know. It could be less than we expect, but I think it's the real deal, and I think it's really dangerous. I think the fact that you've got basically China, the US, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft in an arms race makes it really hard to control, hard to regulate. And yeah, I'm definitely worried about it.
I am too. And let me just wrap it up by saying, isn't it interesting, Jeffrey? You know, we watched all those Terminator movies, and, you know, back then it was like kind of like, oh, ha, 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 and this is funny and cool, and this and this and this. And I was sitting on my back porch with somebody the other day, and they were kind of laughing about it. And I'm like, hey, bro, I'm like, yeah, like, no, it's actually kind of moving from ha ha to kind of like, no, this could get messy. Like this could get messy.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree with that for sure.
Yeah, I'm worried about it. Jeffrey, congratulations on your career. Congratulations on what you're building.
Thank you, sir.
You're a super smart guy, a hell of a lot smarter than me. Let's not compare IQ scores.
I don't think that's true at all. I think you just play you just play in the role. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate you asking the questions, and congratulations on your podcast and all the good work you do.
Same to you, my friend.